Huntsville, Alabama. You know we've got space camp and rockets and government contractors, but did you know we have one kick-ass music scene that doesn't get near enough attention? Well, that's about to change. Welcome to Uprising, a podcast about the people that make Huntsville's music scene so cool. Hosted by me, Bill Fowler, Huntsville native and lifelong musician. So strap on that guitar, flip on that amp, and crank it all the way up. You've just joined the Uprising. Isn't this cool?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah. This is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
You and who else?
Well, this is me and James Irvin.
Just the two of you?
Yes.
You're playing all the instruments,
Mm-hmm.
and Irvin on drums.
Yes.
Tell me who James Irvin is. Tell everybody who James Irvin is.
He's one of my favorite musicians
Tremendous.
and people I've ever known.
Yeah.
He's James Irvin.
Yeah.
He's great.
So I met him at Blues Jam
Yeah.
on Sundays.
Right.
And I go there just, with Freddie and to hang out and play some, whatever song I know in E.
Right.
And Irvin's up there playing the drums, and then during one of the breaks, he shows up and he plays Sultans of Swing.
On guitar, drums.
And that's when I really hated him.
Yeah. Right.
He was an amazing drummer, and then, so we'll have to tag James.
Yeah, he's like the prince of post-punk, or not post-punk, more like the Marshall Crenshaw and Elvis Costello and all that cool stuff in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And he's too young to know it, but he does anyway.
Well, and on top of that, it's a solid guy.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people.
Are we good on levels? Are you okay with all right, good. So I'm here with Dave Anderson. I mean, one of my heroes. I can say that. I can say that because you're so much older than me.
Right.
But I mean, I really appreciate you being here. This is really fantastic. I would describe almost everything I do as fledgling, but this particular project is a fledgling project, if there ever was one, like a podcast about Huntsville music.
I think it's already cool. I saw the last one with Alan.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you and even despite having seen it, here you are. I really appreciate you being here. So Dave Anderson, I mean, if you've been in Huntsville for any period of time and have been out and seen local music, of course, Dave's name is all over the place. And you are, as I described Alan last night, you are clearly on the Mount Rushmore of Huntsville local music stuff. And you
wow.
And I think this means you've been around for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
And your resume speaks for itself. I mean, for folks who don't know who you are, I mean, you've been in Huntsville as a working musician for a long time. And as a young man, you began as an active working musician. And then, I mean, I saw you first at Dragmatic. I guess, did I see you before that? What was your...
Actually, we met about 31 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a playhouse.
Yeah.
And the Jungle played there, and you and Jeff, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And Sid were helping David Hendricks with the PA.
Yeah.
And I thought, who are these little kids? Which now we're about the same age because it's relative. But
right. Of course.
We're probably 4 or 5 years apart.
Right.
But I heard you guys play and was like, wow, look at these little kids.
Yeah, those were different times. And of course, in relative age in musician years, it's not the years, it's the miles, like that's how you judge each other by their rings.
Right.
Well, man, again, thank you for being here. So we are right now sitting at the top of the Times building.
It's cool up here.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it really
and I
is.
mean, look at this setting. This is called the Lighthouse. This is Kathy Lighton's yoga studio. Her husband, Doug, the producer, is behind us and doing a fantastic job. Assuming you can hear all this, and Doug's doing a good job. So we're right now we're live on Facebook, and we're also recording this for a podcast that we'll post later on. So I wanted to do a podcast because, and I want your take on this. I feel like the Huntsville music scene, which has been around for a very long time,
yes,
been vibrant for a very long time.
It has.
And there are people who are moving to Huntsville who their exposure maybe within the last year has been that there was a consulting group brought in to kind of investigate how to make what we have better. Right. And I think some of the assumption was that we didn't have anything, or that we had something that needed to be in some way augmented or boosted.
Right.
Which really, if you and I both have been around long enough to know that we have an incredible group of people who do incredible music here.
Absolutely.
We just need to be highlighted. So that was the purpose of this, really.
Right.
And to piggyback on Alan's Listen Local success.
Right, which is a great thing.
Which is a great thing. And we just need to kind of continue that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go back and well, let me do this first. Your current situation, and I mean situation meaning like your current projects. Mm-hmm. You've got like 100 things going on. The number one thing.
Not as much now, but go ahead.
Atlanta Rhythm Section.
Right. That's my number one.
So if you didn't know this, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, which is still a very popular working band, which I guess their peak years were, what would you say?
Probably 76 to 1980.
So like bastions of classic
when they were
rock.
having hits.
Right. Right in the original.
Around long before, long after.
And there's a circuit, I guess, for like the Molly Hatchets and the Atlanta Rhythm Section, the Kansas and bands that kind of came through that era that now tour together regularly. And you're a part of that.
Glad to be a part of it. I'm like a guest in the house they built years ago. So
and you're actively doing that. So when I see you on Facebook, like you're at some airport, you're going to something. Give me a sense of what that schedule is like.
It's not super busy as far as we don't get on a bus and travel. We go out on weekends and come home, which is great. We get enough of the excitement of getting out there and playing new places, playing together, hanging out, meeting new people. Then we get home, get to be out with our families and everything. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
But you're entering
cool places.
You're entering like spring and summer, so there's going to be festival season,
Sure.
and then you have the cruises that you do.
Yes.
And you still do that?
Yeah. The cruise season is usually like the beginning of winter because it's all the people from up north are dying to get to warm weather. So it makes sense.
And you've been playing with them, like we just said a minute ago, but you've been playing with them since 2007.
Right. And I just realized how long it's been recently.
Yeah.
I wasn't counting.
Well, I want to get back to Atlanta Rhythm Section because that's just the coolest thing ever. And but even so, attached to that, you have your own solo stuff that you do around town.
Right.
And then you have the Dave Anderson Project.
Yes.
Aside from those three things, what else is going on?
That's it for now. I was playing with Black Jacket Symphony for quite a while, but it got to be juggling, booking ARS and Black Jacket. It was just a nightmare trying to keep it together, which is a good problem to have, but I had to choose between one of them.
Well, and I think people don't realize that when you commit to a project like Atlanta Rhythm Section and Black Jacket Symphony, probably even more so, there's not only performance time, there's rehearsal time.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
with Black Jacket, ARS never rehearses.
So, I think
we've had like 4 rehearsals since I joined.
I think I read that somewhere. Yeah. I think Matt Waite did an article on you before you went on one of the cruises where you were like, we just kind of show up.
Like I met the bass player when I went on stage for the first gig.
How intimidating is that?
To meet you. It was very intimidating.
Yeah.
Because I was such a fan. I mean, I love those songs. I grew up on those songs. I saw them in concert when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So it was nerve-wracking, but everybody was really nice. And within a month, it was really comfortable.
Yeah. And so they took you in, and you've become part of that family. And now the touring thing, you know everybody, and everybody's very comfortable and very cool. So out of the year, how many gigs will you do with them?
I think we do about 40 or 50 gigs a year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but something around that.
And so you no longer do Black Jacket Symphony?
No, it's I'd love to go back to do it, but it's just I have to commit. If I say they're doing Dark Side of the Moon, they'll book 10 dates. I have to commit to those 10 dates, which I did it for a while.
Yeah.
I would commit to these, and just hope that an ARS gig didn't come through. And one time they let me get a sub for ARS, and I Skyped with my good buddy Robin, and he was gonna sub for me. He got rained out. So I just, at that point, I thought, I'm just really pushing it. I just need to just stick with one thing because with something like ARS, you have to commit. When any date comes through, you have to do it.
We have a contract. Do you have
other people to think about?
An employment agreement with them, or you commit to a certain schedule?
It's a spoken agreement that if a gig comes in with them, I do it.
Yeah.
So
Black Jacket Symphony, what albums did you do with them?
Well, they do. They do some Beatles that I've done. Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper. My main thing was Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
I was like on the the front end of getting that started.
Yeah,
That was kind of my show, was my baby. I picked my replacement, recommended him, and he's great, but it was just like, it was tough.
Like, I'm gonna get into the weeds like super early in this thing. I'm nerding out on this whole Black Jacket Symphony thing because I've been to 2 shows.
It's incredible. They do a great job.
They do a great job.
Yeah.
I went to Fleetwood Mac and I went to Prince. And, you know, someone like me and someone like you, excuse me, I'm looking at the amps. I'm looking at what these are the amps. These are vintage stuff. The tone is unmatched. That's the whole purpose, is to recreate that album as closely as possible. And there's no wiggle room there. Like, you go in knowing that you're going to be David Gilmour for these shows, and you play it note for note. There's no Dave Anderson on that stage. Explain to me what that's like to be in that environment.
The weirdest part of it is like with Dark Side of the Moon, I played those songs my whole life. And I've done my versions of those songs. They're real close.
Right.
But they're 80% close. But that 20%, and the rehearsals with Black Jacket, it was very democratic, and it was such like a all-star kind of, like, these young guys that were great, older guys that were great, and they were all they had band leaders mentalities, so everybody would kind of collaborate, and the drummer might say, "There's a guitar lick you're not doing there," and somebody might say it to somebody else, and it was never like any kind of ego thing. It's like, "Oh yeah, thanks for telling me," and then you'd start making these notes. So I had to unlearn a lot of habits for these songs that I played.
Well, because you're going to a show, you're playing an album that is iconic. I mean, one of the most popular rock and roll albums of all time. Yeah. And there are people in the audience that know it note for note and are waiting to are watching you to play it note for note.
Right.
And like I said, there's no Dave Anderson on that stage. You've got to like embody David Gilmour, or it's not right.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so we've kind of established who you are and what you're up to now, where you've been. Let me kind of roll back the clock a little bit and tell me, you grew up South Huntsville.
Grissom High School.
Grissom High School. What was the music scene like growing up in Huntsville at the time?
I thought it was pretty incredible. I was going to bars probably when I was 16. My first show I saw was the cartoons at Gino's.
Yeah.
It was like a jam night, and Phil Proctor, who's so great, he was there, and I sat in with them and played bass to Should I Stay or Should I Go by The Clash. And my sister took me there, and I was completely underage. And back then there were so many bars and musicians, and there were dry counties around everywhere. Yeah. So people would come to Huntsville. So that it was just the economy of the music scene was a lot higher. I mean, bands could afford to bring in a big PA for what they were making and do a big show. And the musicians were really great.
Yeah. So at the time, if you were a young garage band, what were your options? I mean, Tip Top was there. What were the
This
other
is
places?
before Tip Top.
Okay.
My first gig when I was 14 was at the Coffee Clutch, and with the Jungle.
Yeah.
Ken Waters, Jim Cavender, Mark Smith.
Yeah.
But back then, we just any excuse to play. Like I remember we played at my sister's sorority's dance at UAH.
Yeah.
This is when we were still in high school. Revelation was the band. I was in it with Anthony Sharp. Anthony Sharp. And I remember we auditioned for it. So we tried to find the 2 least heavy metal songs we could think of. A Billy Squier song, and I think 18 by Alice Cooper, just because it was on the radio.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to us that they wouldn't like us.
Yeah, for sure.
We just wanted a gig.
Right.
We weren't making money.
Yeah.
We just wanted to play our guitars and do our thing.
Right. And there's a sorority aspect of it. There's a girls aspect.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, didn't have any game.
Right.
But we hoped.
Right.
But my sister was so mad because the rest of the show was like Judas Priest and all this stuff, and then play something we can dance to. And we didn't care. We just wanted to play.
It depends on what kind of dancing you're doing, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Judas Priest. So your influences at the time, like who would you say was kind of pulling you into the scene then?
You mean as far as local musicians?
Yeah. Like who were you looking up to at the time?
Well, there was the guys in the Jungle. They were all older than me and taught me so much. Jim Cavender taught me so much about music, and Ken Waters taught me so much about music. And then when I started going to bars, I I'd see Driver, Bobby Hendricks, and that was like seeing a concert in a small room.
It's still kind of like that.
Yeah,
actually.
it is. Yeah, they still bring it.
Yeah.
He brings a show.
Yeah.
Like
Sunset Guns.
Yes, awesome. But that's what I used to see.
Yeah.
And when Sunset Guns came back, it was like there's been a complete hole that you're filling that hasn't been there for so many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I go see them and just wish that I could do that.
So your sister takes you to Gino's and you play, the Clash, 3 Chords and the Truth,
Right.
Your instrument at the time, like what brought you into music? Like when did you decide this was probably going to be the thing for you?
My dad played drums.
Yeah.
He didn't do it professionally. His generation, you just didn't do that.
Yeah.
You got a career, you did your thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when I was 3 or 4, much less fun for my sister. My sister was helping my mom fold laundry, and I was sitting in front of my dad's drum kit watching him play to Elvis records cranked up and Creedence records cranked up, and him just playing the drums. Yeah. I was like, wow. And then he'd bring his friends around that had electric guitars, and then that was, whoa. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. And he never played professionally, but he was awesome. And it was a spark. I knew what I was going to do since I could crawl. So you had a musical environment in your house. Definitely. And encouraging to you. Yes. So making noise and kind of expressing yourself and that kind of thing was encouraged at your house. Yeah. Always. And your first band? Rocks. ROX. Format? What was your format there? To rock. Yeah, of course. But it was some friends from elementary school. Buddy of mine, Ian Duthie, who's plays guitar in Nashville. Rob and Brad Johnson, who were 2 brothers that the first guys I played with. It's the first band that, there was a guy playing a bass part. Yeah. There's a guy playing the drum part. We played Smoke on the Water in Rob and Brad's garage. Yeah. And when we realized that 4 of us were doing that thing in sync, we played it for probably 8 hours and never got tired of it. That's when you call the girls over. Like, we have a thing. They didn't show. Yeah. But Alan and I were talking about, like, how many air balls can you shoot in gym before you realize you probably should pick up a guitar? Right. Like, at some point, athletics kind of loses its steam as a young man, and you're like, I'm gonna have to impress the ladies somehow. Yeah. My uncle Tom, when I was in 4th grade, and I played guitar for the family. He said, "One day you're gonna appreciate this. Girls like this." I was like, gross. Yeah. And then at some point it clicks, and then. Yeah, then you practice till your fingers bleed. Like that's the old. Oh, sure. Yeah, all the cliches. That was my life. So it's something that thought about today is, and again, something that Alan and I discussed is a lot of the most talented people that have come through the music scene, doing kind of our generation, is they left and came back to kind of grow their craft, I guess. Alan goes to Appalachian State, and he left a fairly mediocre drummer and came back a really seasoned singer-songwriter. Yes. And it can finger pick better than really most people that I've ever seen. I have finger envy. Yeah, no doubt. Don't we all? And so, the Beatles had their Frankfurt, the 10,000 hours thing that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. Where did you cut your teeth? Where did you become a seasoned musician? Well, the first was Disney World, which is kind of funny. This is a good story. Let's hear it. Yeah. I went through my freshman year at UNA. I didn't do that great because I was there really. Rob and Brad Johnson, my buddies, had moved away, and we got back together at UNA to start a band. School was kind of secondary. Yeah. I don't know why we thought that was all right. But so once I decided I wanted to drop out of college, it went over really great with my folks. Sure. But within a month, Ken Waters had sent in the Jungle album to Disney World, and we all got hired to play there. It was called an internship, but the internship was like a program that didn't really work, so they just folded it and hired us as union players. I'm just want to interrupt here. Ken Waters sends a demo tape to Disney World. I mean, I'm thinking David Geffen would be an obvious choice. Even Johnny Sandlin would be an obvious choice. We knew somebody there. There was somebody that Beth Hardcastle, who was a few grades ahead of me, a drummer at Grissom. Her husband was the head of this program. So Ken got wind of it, and we all went except for Kavanaugh. He was like, I ain't doing it. But in fact, we were playing the parade in Frontierland, and he he came down to visit, and we were recording in the studio under the castle, basically, underground. And I remember being on the float playing guitar on the Civil May and going through Frontierland, and Jim's like about 50 people that just going.
Oh, that's great.
So, but it was still great because we played with musicians from around the world that were incredible, and it was the first step. Well, the jungle was the first step, but I always tried to play with musicians better than me.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be around musicians that were better than me because I knew that was my college. I mean, I dropped out after 1 year. My college was to learn from other musicians.
So you get to Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. This is completely a non sequitur. I mean, it's amazing. That's fantastic. No costumes. You have to dress up like Goofy or anything.
No. But we shared the stage with all those guys.
Of course you did.
At the castle.
But that's where you did that's where the sun rose and you're a musician. You're a professional musician.
Yeah, my parents, in a month, they went from wanting to disown me and being embarrassed to tell their friends I dropped out of school to going, oh, he's living on his own. So it's like I had a gig, I had an apartment. So I want to focus on, that's a huge thing. It's not like you're going to LA and you're trying to, elbow your way into some club for a shot at something. That was a job. Yeah.
Like you're getting paid.
Sure.
And how old are you at that point?
18.
That's incredible. And freaking Cavender.
Yeah, he was smart not to do it, but in some ways he missed out.
But that's the turning point for you.
It was, for sure.
Because you leave UNA and you think, okay, well, I've disappointed my parents. I should have gotten an education. I feel kind of like I'm in the doghouse. Then you go there and something happens that it legitimizes your musical career, and you probably became a better player. Obviously, you became a better player. And you're playing guitar this whole time.
Yes.
Okay, so you come back, you leave. Give me the timeline here. So you leave.
This is around 86, 87. And when we specifically decided, Mark, Ken, and I, to quit at the end of the summer of 87, and Ken booked a tour for the jungle on the East Coast. So we literally packed up, moved back to Huntsville, and got in a van and toured the East Coast for the jungle. And not realizing that we were dumb kids from Alabama. Back then you didn't have YouTube to see your competition. We just thought we're the best thing ever. We're going to go do what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we had some successes. There were some towns like Pittsburgh. It was a packed crowd the first time. So we go back and our money would go up and we would pack it out. Some towns we'd play like a dinner gig for happy hour, but it was to pay to get to the next gig.
Yeah.
And Ken booked it all by himself. He just got the right books, looked up the numbers, and kept calling people.
Yeah. So they love you in Pittsburgh. Still.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I went back years later to the Shady Side Balcony, which is where we always played. And there was this older guy, Stuart, they called him the mayor of Shady Side, which really means he's the guy that sat at the end of the bar.
Right.
And he said, aren't you a bass player? I was like, somebody remembers me.
So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you do this. And like I said, like a lot of the people who I think are the icons of the Huntsville music scene, at least that are my age and our age, went off to do something.
Right.
And I'm trying to get a sense of, again, being new to this and kind of studying the patterns of success for musicians in Huntsville, trying to get a sense of, do people from Birmingham have to leave town to seek their fortune and come back and try to create something? Do people from Atlanta and people from, I spent some time in Austin recently. That's a different animal altogether.
It is.
But the ladder of ascension is so clear there. The venue kind of ladder. The Disney World situation with you aside, was the Huntsville music scene not just healthy enough at the time for you to stay here and be successful?
Well, it was healthy enough that I was working. I was always working, but I always wanted to figure out what's the next step.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to jump on trains that were already going. Like I got the gig. I played with James Blair and Kelly O'Neill and Terrell Tibbs with Rhapsodon, which is like a jazz fusion band. And through those connections, I got the BB and CC gig. So that was a sideman thing, and that was probably 90, 91. So we got to go do the talk shows, do a Tonight Show, Arsenio Hall, and tour.
Yeah.
And so that was just that was a sideman thing, but I learned a lot from that. Played with some musicians that were so great.
Yeah.
And it was like school all over again. And then with the Brother Kane thing, Damon Johnson had already started Brother Kane. They had a record deal, put their first record out. And when Glenn left, it's crazy because Glenn and I were in bands in high school.
Yeah.
I joined onto that. So I didn't have to find out how to get a record deal. I just kind of lucked into getting in a band that had one.
Right. So why are you
speaking of Glenn Maxey, I've got to mention Hayes.
Yeah.
A band from Huntsville High School. I was a freshman at Grissom, and Eddie Gailey, the drummer. And back then I don't know how we found each other without cell phones and the interwebs and all that stuff.
Right.
But I remember Eddie Gailey called me and said, "I heard you can play guitar. We've got a power trio. We want to do dual guitar leads. You want to come over and play?" So it was Drew Westrope, Glenn Maxey, and Eddie. And I went over to their house and jammed, and that was the first really good band I played in, that everybody really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I played with them for a couple of years. But so anyway, I had to back up and talk about Brother Kane and remembered about that.
So Brother Kane goes into, you start your own stuff. Like you begin to kind of build your own. Here you have this kind of a backlog of experience, and you begin to kind of develop your own stuff. Let me ask you just real quickly, why here? Like you've been to places, you've toured at this stage in your career. Why not just go to New York? Why not just go to LA and just do the thing?
I don't know. I mean, I might always wonder, but
did you have? Surely you had chances to go be a session musician someplace and make a ton of money. Sure, you had a chance to go.
Well, I mean, at that point, Nashville was an option, but BB and CC were based out of Nashville, and I got a real quick sense. Nashville is like two factions: road, studio. Road musicians, to break into studio, it almost never happens. It might be different now because everything's gotten so much smaller in Nashville, but back then I knew that I would just be a road guy, there's nothing really wrong with that, but there's one crossroads that I'll always wonder about, because when Brother Kane was putting out our last album, James Blair, who I played with back in the Repsidon days.
James Blair, an amazing drummer, taught drums at A.B. Stevens for years, and was probably birthed every decent drummer in this town over the age of 30.
Everybody owes drumming to James.
Yeah. Sorry, that was just...
Yeah. He called me right before our last Brother Kane record was coming out, and he said, "We need a guitar." He was playing for Shania Twain. He said, "We need a guitar player that can sing." He said, "I can't guarantee you the gig, but if you show up, you're going to get the gig," because he knew what I could do, because vocals is such a selling point for a side guy. And it's funny because that night, the VH1, was it the Divas or where they had the female, I think they called it Divas. Shania Twain was on it. James was on there with the band, and they're all wearing gold lame. And I wore silver lame at Disney World, and they're all going, and getting the crowd going. I was like, oh man, I don't know. I don't think I can do it. I'll always wonder. Yeah. But I'm glad I stuck with Brother Kane. In fact, I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but the cover of Wishpool, I'm sitting there like this because I was considering that I might have to quit the band, and I'm just feeling so bad because it's my friends. It's like, am I going to have to tell them? Yeah. And I ended up not doing it. So it's good that I didn't. So you passed. Let me just say this out loud, okay? You passed on being the guitar player in Shania Twain's band, arguably one of the hottest musicians at the time. I passed up trying out. I mean, I might not have gotten it. You would have gotten it. I don't want to ruin this. I don't want to complicate this issue. Let's say I would have gotten it. Okay. Well, over gold lame. That was the deal killer. It really was. I hate to say. It was. No, I'm not going to fault you for that. That's pretty good. Okay, so then you're back in Huntsville. Dragmatic. I know I'm jumping. No, that's the next thing, because when Brother Kane ran its course, which was unfortunate. We didn't have any support from our distributors. Now, Brother Kane had 3. Glenn Maxey was on the first album with the other 3 guys, and then I was on the next 2. Yeah. And did really well. At radio, we did great. Yeah. We would play big shows. We would be #1 at rock radio.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to the record stores, and there'd be no CDs. And we literally would go have schmooze parties at each, SEMA was the name of our distributors, at each location, Chicago, Boston, and put our faces with our name and say, please put our records in the store.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it. So we'll never know if we would have sold more records, because these, like Dallas was a great market, Minneapolis was a lot of these great markets that we couldn't sell anything. This is before iTunes. You had to buy a CD.
And is this just the mystery of label politics?
Like, yes, it is.
Yeah,
totally.
Okay, so I think when I came back after college and see you at Crossroads with Dragmatic, you guys were just an amazing band, amazingly tight, amazing band. That may have been, that was one of the moments when I felt like that I was probably done as a working musician. I mean, amazing stuff.
Wow, thanks, but don't want to have that effect on it.
Well, no, you've done that to me a few times, actually. Yeah, don't know.
You're Bill Fowler. You're great.
That's
you
why
were
I'm
great
here.
when you were a kid.
You're really sweet. You've had too much beer. All right, so and then you go from Dragmatic, and you have a series of gigs around here. You guys just do really well. You have an album.
Yeah, Dragmatic was one of those. Also, the theme of being a musician is almost, and I'm still trying. I'm never going to be like, on a major label as a rock star, but there's things I'm still trying. But that was when Brother Kane ran its course, the drummer, Scott Collier, and we started Dragmatic, and we tried to shop for a record deal, did all that stuff. We actually played at South by Southwest and had a guy from RCA that loved us. And we were already recording in New Orleans, doing demos. My buddy, Matt Kobe, ran a studio down there. So they comped us the time to be recouped later. And we were going there to record anyway, but the guy at RCA said, we're going to pay for the next set of sessions. So we were on the way down, all of us in the van, excited, and he called and he said, I'm not sure if I'm ready to risk this. Like we weren't a sure enough thing.
Yeah.
And the guys at the studio said, come on down. And we ended up, we got some of those songs on TV, like Dawson's Creek, one song. Dawson's Creek. So
that was
the studio made their money back from that. But,
the song is If, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to know, if you want to hear this song, it's
it's If.
And it was played a lot.
If Dragmatic. Actually, it was a theme song for two characters, Katie Holmes' character, Pacey and Joey. So whenever they I'm not super familiar with the show.
Whatever.
But I really just saw the episodes our song was in. But they were like not together, but would sometimes get together. They'd play our song whenever they got together, and it made it to the series finale when they finally got together. So they played our song quite a bit.
That's so cool. And Then Again, we don't have to go through the whole.
Oh, Then Again was awesome.
Oh, my favorite Dave Anderson song, of course, is Westbound Train, which I've been singing all day long in advance of this interview. Oh, and every time I see you when you play solo, I'm the jackass that requests that song, and you have to. There's
nothing wrong with requesting an original song. That's a Cavender.
So good.
That's a Cavender and me song.
Well, so good. I want to jump to the Dave Anderson Project because I love that stuff, and I want to ask you a really important question. What's it like playing with your son?
It's awesome. It's great.
Like, give me a sense of
It's surreal. I mean, there's the downside is that sometimes we bring our dad-son dynamic into it, and the other band members are like, come on now. Because I might say things to him I wouldn't say to the other guys.
Right.
And which is not fair to him because I'm his dad.
Yeah.
And it's just, I bring my dadness into it. And I've gotten better about that. But the upside is seeing my son, who's so incredibly talented and such a great personality and such a charismatic guy. And to be looking at him across stage, it's like, there's nothing better than
what
that.
A gift.
It is a total gift.
All right. So how did you get him into music?
I really didn't. I mean, because I didn't want to push anything with my kids. All four of my kids have a lot of musical talent. And my daughter Autumn has pursued it a little bit, like, with school, and then she sings great. She sings at church, but it's not her thing. But she's really good at it. And Stone, he just picked up guitars. And when he was 13, he said, "Dad, I want a Strat because my favorite guitar players are David Gilmour and Jimi Hendrix." I was like, "All right, you get a Strat for Christmas." So that, and people say, "Oh, you taught him well." I didn't teach him at all. I mean, he might have learned from being around me, but I would just kind of watch him. And if there's things that I thought might be a bad habit with how he plays with his fingers, which I've got enough of my own, but I'd say, "You might want to try and not do that," which sometimes he listened, sometimes he didn't. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
But he has his own talent and his own thing. And he really did it on his own. He taught himself.
Well, he's not only is he a really talented musician, he's a solid guy.
Yeah.
You've done a great job.
Thanks.
There, obviously. I played Blues Jam last Sunday, maybe 2 Sundays ago, and he was up there and having a great time. Just a solid guy and doing his own thing with Rob.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So for those of you who don't know, Stone Anderson is Dave's son and plays bass in Rob Aldridge's band, The Proponents.
And that's so cool because Dan, Rob's dad, and I have been friends for so long. And I remember when they first met, and they had like this thing. They were both really young. I think Rob might have been 9 and Stone was 5, something like that. They had this they clicked, but they had this little thing. And their relationship now is exactly like it was the first day they met. And to watch them become friends and become great musicians, it's surreal and really cool. And then when I'm there watching them and Dan's there, we just gotta go, wow. Yeah. It's great.
Is he going to have a career like yours? Do you think, would you encourage him to go on and do the kind of things that you did?
I would never have hoped that any of my kids would go into this as a career, but now that he is, I think so. I mean, he's kind of like me. He doesn't know what else he would want to do.
Right.
And I think there's a default mechanism when you don't have anything else to do. You better try doing what you're doing.
Is it easier to be a professional musician now than it was when you were coming up?
It's both. It was easier then in that the paths were more defined, and they were very concise, narrow paths. But now you've got the internet, you've got YouTube, you've got, for one thing, the information for them to learn how to play is so much more at their disposal. Yeah. Which is, I would have killed for, we remember we'd have a record and slow it down, or rewind a cassette tape and listen.
Yeah. Well, Rodman had a device that was designed for only slowing down tracks so you could listen. And if I'm trying to figure out some song, I go to YouTube and watch like a 9-year-old kid from Taiwan.
Yeah.
Who can play circles around me and everybody I know.
And the good thing about that is you can see that, but the bad thing, like I said before, when the Jungle went out, we had nobody to challenge that we weren't the best people in the world.
Right.
And I think there's encouragement you get from seeing the community out there, but there's sometimes it might be discouraging going, geez, where do I fit in with all these monster players and all these monster people?
Well, and social media has given us so many other channels to kind of promote ourselves, but it also has given everybody else channels to promote themselves. And it's very learning lessons from little kids on the side of the world. It can be discouraging sometimes, where you think there's nothing new under the sun and anything that you come up with has already been done and done and done again.
Right.
And whereas, when I was, a young kid and we had a garage band, we felt like we were good. Our first inclination was go record.
Right.
I mean, I remember getting in a car and driving to Johnny Samlin's house in Decatur. We found his address in the phone book. Drove to his house.
That's how we did it back then. Okay.
Yeah, drove to his house, and we got there. We didn't really know what we were doing. Right. Like we were 14 and 15 years old.
That was a good band, though.
Well, thanks. We were a good band. We weren't good enough to see. We were going to let you discover us. So, hey, look, here we are, discover us. And little did we know that he was recording Widespread Panic at the time. And he didn't have time for us, but that was the idea. That was the only way that we could market ourselves. And now we have so many more channels, but everybody else does too.
Right.
And you need, not only do you need social media savvy, you need business savvy, marketing. And to be a successful band isn't necessarily just being talented at your instrument. It's also being talented at the ability to promote yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're seeing that. I mean, you're seeing that as well. The Dave Anderson Project, you guys were all over social. And did a great job with that. But now it's how do you make a living if you're not playing guitar for Atlanta Rhythm Section, how do you make a living as a professional musician?
Well, that's $1 million question or $100 question. depending on how you look at it. But like if you're selling music online with streaming, they're trying to find new algorithms to rein that in to where people can get money, but the genie's so much out of the bottle. And with gigs, I mean, there's been a turnover, and I'm an old musician. I'm one of those guys, and I've seen the turnover of people. I've seen people come to my gigs. I've seen people age out, get married, not come to gigs. I see new people, and the turnover of people that go out, not just Huntsville, everywhere. People that go out, the millennials, they don't go to seek out entertainment like they used to. They've got so many other options that they still play video games and they're in their 20s.
Right.
Social media, they might have somewhere they meet to have drinks, but and they want to go see concerts of the bands that are established, but to go out and see gigs for people that the middle class, if you will, of entertainment, there's not much interest in it. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And I'm scared for the players that are coming up, their challenges with that. But at the same time, a lot of these young people don't want to go play anymore. They or play it. They want to be on YouTube. They want to do that stuff. And I don't know much about it enough to have an expert opinion on it. So, but they must be onto something that I'm not.
Yeah.
And because people say, who are the new up and coming young players? There's some great young players, but there's not many that I'm aware of. And that means either I'm not in the pools that they're swimming in, or I just don't know.
Well, that's a good question. A lead in on just the status of the music scene in Huntsville. You see it probably better and more often than anybody else.
Right.
I think, and there's a lot of opinions around this, but in order to be a successful music scene, there needs to be this kind of a venue ladder of ascension.
Right. Sure.
There needs to be that dive bar that you can get in when you're 19 to do an all ages show. So your garage band can like have something to reach for.
Sure.
And then you need that sidetracks that is going to be that place that has a little bit more of an environment, a little more of a professional feel. And then you're going to have something that's more of a theater environment at the BBC. That ladder of ascension, so you can be discovered and the audience can get wider and wider and wider.
Right.
Do you feel like that right now in Huntsville that is a healthy environment? I'm not suggesting it's not.
I don't think it's unhealthy, but a lot, like you said, a lot of those things are not connected. But I think with what Sean Patrick's doing and all that, I think it's the jury's still out on how it's all going to end up being implemented. But with the music ecosystem audit, I think they have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it was so polarizing. Some musicians are like, "What are they doing coming into our community?" And others were like, "Come fix it," which neither one is going to happen.
Right.
But the intentions are so great, and I believe in Sean so much. Like Sean, the Dave Anderson project wouldn't happen. He'd call me and said, "We want us to kick off the camp.
Yeah.
Will you put a show together?" And I've been threatening to do a solo record for 4 years. I've been writing, and it's just with life, and it's so hard. He gave me a deadline. He said, "Put a band together, be ready for this show." So I was like, "All right."
Yeah.
So I wrote some new songs, got a band together, and we did it. Got rained out halfway through, but it was such a great thing, and for him to give me that inspiration and deadline was just so awesome. So that's why I'm excited to see what they're going to do, because I met with some of the people. I don't know, you probably did too, when they came to do the audit.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty positive about it.
Well, I think that the biggest positive takeaway from that, I mean, it's this particular stage, is that they came.
Yes.
You know,
and that the city okayed the budget to pay them to come.
Yeah.
And the people at RCP.
Yeah.
With the catalyst to make it happen. I mean, the fact that people care enough, and there's the things that are going to make things happen is when you convince people that there's money to be made.
Yeah.
Like that it will help tourism to really get people to fully open the doors. You got to convince them that they're going to make money.
Right.
But but along that path, if it opens doors for younger musicians, and a big theme of that was bridging the gaps of R&B, hip hop, rock, and these communities that never coexist, and encouraging that to happen. I'd love to see that happen.
Well, that's a good point. I was just having this conversation this morning about bridging those lines. The Parkway is the Mason-Dixon line, practically, between communities. I mean, this is the unseen wall between cultures, really. And if you look at some of the most vibrant communities in the country, and the events that are around those communities that bring everybody together, when suddenly there is no color, it's Mardi Gras. Right. You know, there's street festivals all over this country. There's, Austin has music festivals all over the place. It's when people get together around arts and entertainment. That is the backbone of any city's culture.
Yes.
Commerce is great. Research parks and bridge streets and all these things are wonderful. City centers, and it's all great. But the backbone of that interaction, where you bring a lot of people into one place, is arts and entertainment, and a music scene has a whole lot to do with that.
Sure.
If you're a young musician in Huntsville right now, if you're a Dave Anderson and you're 18 years old and you don't have the opportunity to go ride somebody's, experiences down into Disneyland, what do you do? What are you doing right now?
Putting your stuff on YouTube, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, but
the reason why I ask is I've asked Alan the same thing. Is he has this kind of avenue. Alan Little, who does Listen Local, he's opened up this door, and so there are people who are in the area who are singer-songwriters who want to be exposed to the greater community.
Right.
Well, Alan has that kind of thing. He's attracting people to that thing. If you're a garage band, and you guys and you're guys and girls, and you have the chops, and you want to go do something, you go knock down Eddie's door, you go someplace and try to get in to get a gig someplace. I mean, I guess that's the only thing.
And open mic things like the Blues Jam and like the thing that we did on Tuesdays.
Yeah. You still doing that?
No, we're not. It got to where it was there was not quite as much interest from the musicians that participated and from the people that came to listen. And we took a break for the summer. Yeah. And we thought, let's take a break, because we didn't want it to fizzle. And there were still a few people that were diehards that were great. Sean Peabody, Tom McCown, Harrison Knox, that were always there. And it was great when you played. So many iconic moments with my buddies would come play. Like you and Alan when we did Southern Cross. But again, with that, I always wanted to try to figure out ways to get more younger people to come. Yeah. As great as it was, and it was great because bands formed out of that. There were people that met at that, and like Sunset Guns was formed out of that. Yeah. But I kept asking Stone, and this is probably helps answer your question. I'd say to Stone, where are the people your age? How do we get them to this? Because I want to find those hot shot kids, because our thing was not really like an open mic. I got some flack for this, but we said you have to be able to play a certain amount to play. It's not an amateur. Right. It's a intermediate. Right. To pro. Right. And it didn't have anything to do with experience. Yeah. It's can you play? Yeah. And I really wanted to find the young hotshot musicians, and some of them came out, and like my buddy Wesley Patterson's son came and played drums, and he was great. He was in high school, but so young, great players. So we wanted to find more of those, and I don't know if they don't know where we are, we don't know where they are, right? And that's those gaps that would be great to bridge. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I love those Tuesday nights. I mean, I think anybody who's out there who's listening or watching this right now, who wants to experience the music scene right now. I mean, there's the Sunday Night Blues Jam at Lone Goose is tremendous. Freddie Faust is a saint walking on this earth for dealing with the kind of stuff he deals with. Oh my gosh, yes. So if you're unfamiliar, like this open mic on Sunday nights at Lone Goose, you walk in with your guitar or your Hammond organ or whatever you might have strapped to your back. You sign up and you put your name on the list, and you're going to get to play that night. Yeah, yeah. Now it's a 9 to midnight kind of thing, right. But you're going to see. And I will admit, the first time I went there, first couple of times, I was with J.D. Wheeler, who is a good friend of mine, a fantastic blues guitar player. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's people walking up on the stage. I try not to judge, okay? But sure. It looked like they shook a Walmart out and everybody had a guitar.
And these folks get up on the stage, and I'm like, everyone's about to be embarrassed. Like, this is going to be not good.
But then you have some Susan Boyle moments where you go, this guy's not going to be very good. There's like, oh my
there
gosh.
isn't a single person that I have ever seen play that didn't blow the doors off the place. Now, there's some folks who blowing the doors was a level of,
but that's what it's about. It's getting them, because we all have a certain amount of self-delusion to do it.
Surely.
Because we all sucked when we started. Well, we did. And we, like, trying to get on my sister's sorority dance gig, we don't care if we're embarrassed. And there's a certain amount of that kind of fearlessness or cluelessness or whatever combination it is.
Well, I think there's $2 PBRs on Sundays, so that I think that helps.
That helps.
But the Sunday night thing is great, and then there's Tuesdays over here at
Greg Stack's thing. Yeah,
oh, God.
I haven't been, but I've watched videos.
Oh, so cool good, so good. But it's a different vibe. It's like an acoustic kind of thing,
right?
Milltown kind of feel. Really good. So, and then you get into later in the week, and of course the world opens up at that stage.
Right.
The point of this entire endeavor, which I will stress at every episode, is that we have an incredibly rich current music scene happening right now, and we just don't have the exposure to the individuals like yourself who make the whole thing spin. If somebody wants to hear your music, you're on Spotify
Dave Anderson Project.
Yeah.
And it's on, we have just one single out, and that's Welcome, and it's on iTunes, Spotify, all those streaming.
And if I want to get on like a big boat and watch you play, like how would that happen?
Well, shameless plug. We're going to be on the Rock Legends cruise in it's the end of February, beginning of March, and those are fun. The rock cruises are so much fun. This one's going to be us, Roger Daltrey, Roger Hodgson from Supertramp, Paul Rogers, who, gosh.
Now you've done one with them before, right? You did one with Blue Oyster Cult, and you did one.
We've done with a lot of the classic.
Yeah.
Paul Rogers, the first cruise we did, he was on,
and he still got it. He
sounds better than he did in the 70s.
So here what I would be worried about if I were you on a boat.
Right.
You can't really run from people on a boat.
Well, that's the whole thing is they encourage all the bands to be out there and hang out, and it's a beautiful thing, because, like, for me, I'm not an original member of ARS, but to get out there, people will stop you and want to take pictures, and it's not necessarily that it's feeding my ego, but it's just like, it's so satisfying to know that you made people excited about hearing music.
So when someone comes up to you, do you say like, "Hi, I'm Jimmy Page"?
Yeah, it works every time.
All right, let me ask you. I'm going to let you go live your life here in just a minute. I could talk to you for like a million years, but I want to ask you about that experience with ARS. When you're playing with them, you've been playing with them for years now.
Mm-hmm.
People are attached to these songs.
Sure.
Like my kind of suggestion here is that there aren't really Atlanta Rhythm Section fans. There are fans of individual songs. Like, the song is the king, and you see that on stage. Like, you can see this response to people. They're really not there to see you jump around, which I'm sure you look great in leather pants, and I can only imagine.
Imagine it times 10. That's how good it is.
But the people are in love with this song because it's memory producing.
Right, and to see that out there is awesome. Even though I wasn't part of their heyday creating those songs, I was a fan.
Well, and the reason why I think that's powerful is because you'll have Molly Hatchet play Whistle Stop, mm-hmm. and it will be only later that you find out that there's one original member.
Sure, there's that with all of us.
But who cares? Because no one cares. The only thing they care about is those songs.
Right.
And if there's a drummer here or a bass player here or whatever, if the original singer's there, that's even better.
Usually the best. We have our original singer.
Yeah.
He started the band. He wasn't the guy that had the hits, but the guy that sang the hits was trying to sound like him. It's kind of like Gabriel and Colin. And so we've got the original singer who's awesome.
But it's not unusual for bands like this, these rock legend bands, to be playing with sometimes no original members, right? That can happen.
Yeah, it does happen. I think, it's a very slippery slope once you don't have any original members. But
But again, it's the power of the song.
But yeah, and you know, Rodney puts it the best. He puts it best, which you can argue the logic of this argument, but it is a good argument. He said, "Are you a fan of the Yankees?"
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
Which players?
Yeah.
That were in the Yankees before. Babe Ruth's not going to be there.
Mickey Mantle's not around.
Mickey
anymore.
Mantle's not around.
Yeah.
But so you, and there's something to be said for that. And it's a challenge to deliver their legacy. But we also have Dean Daughtry, who co-wrote all the hits.
Yeah.
And to see the people meet him and get excited, and to meet Rodney, and to Paul Goddard, the original bass player, who rest in peace. I got to be there for his last 4 years playing rock and roll after not playing for 30 years. To see the excitement of them, of people meeting them,
right,
and for them to sign the old records and to hear their stories. Because when I joined the band, it was just Dean, and then Rodney and Paul rejoined the band. And I heard great stories from Dean about meeting the Beatles at the Bag of Nails at London, and all these great stories. He jammed with Hendrix. But then when the other two guys came, to hear them tell the stories together. Yeah. And you remember that time? Oh, yeah. And then the guy that plays Polly Walnuts from The Sopranos, he was there. He was really a mobster. Yeah, and that's when McCartney, you know, and all these stories come to life, and going, man, that's some cool stuff. Yeah. Just to be around it.
And you're in this club, which is the coolest thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're on the boat. And what could be better?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. Listen, I'm going to let you go, but I have one more question, because every musician that I'm going to bring on this, I want to ask you this question. Okay. This is unrehearsed. All right. You already live this rock star life, so this is kind of an unfair thing. But let's say Dave Anderson has the opportunity to play with any living band or musician at a specific place, on a specific stage, playing a specific song. What is your fantasy to play with somebody on a specific stage? Where is it, and what song are you playing?
Paul McCartney, for sure. Stage, doesn't matter. Maybe Hollywood Bowl, because it's a big Beatles scene. Cabin Club, and the Beatles medley. The whole medley. That's what I'd love to do.
Yeah, nice. All right. And he's singing lead, you're singing backup?
Yes, of course.
Well,
you know, if I decide he's singing lead that night.
Oh, gotcha. What's your fantasy? When you can decide what you want to do.
Yeah. And I haven't called him back yet, but I'm going to make it happen for sure.
Hey, Dave Anderson, like, you are just a gem for being here.
Oh, man. Hey, I can't tell you.
Thank you so much.
Honored to be here.
This is great.
With you, Bill.
This is awesome.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, Dave Anderson, like, such a great dude. And we're going to go out with some Paul McCartney. Or some Dave Anderson, sounding a lot
like, to sound like Paul McCartney.
That's awesome. Buddy, thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to do part 2 at some point in the future. All about it.